Meeting to order at 6:03.
Just take a seat. No, go ahead.
I keep taking, excuse me. I have 3 items this evening from the docket of February 19th, 2019. I entertain a motion to approve the application for a scrap metal recycler junk dealer from Polarized New England Company, LLC, DBA Schnitzer Northeast at 136 Bacon Street, Attleboro.
Second.
Does anybody have any questions or anything?
So we were going to, because
Oh, yeah.
we were going to hold that one, so if,
Withdraw your second, please.
I'd be happy to.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry about that.
no, that's okay. We're just going to hold on to that one and talk about it next week during committee.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, let me try this again. From the docket of February 5th, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the application to amend a Class 2 license dated January 9th, 2019, from Stephanie Kushin of Best Buy Automotive and Tire, Inc., at 925 and 931 Washington Street, Attleboro, for 40 display spaces and 8 customer spaces.
Second.
Thank you. We had the public hearing on the, I don't remember the date, but we had the public hearing for this already. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. From the docket of January 8th, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the application dated December 13th, 2018, from Attorney Thomas Reedy on behalf of Cumberland Farms, Inc., for a new license to store flammables and combustibles at 633 Washington Street, Attleboro.
Second.
And we had the public hearing on the same date as well on this, and everything was signed off by the fire department. We're just basically the license for the container. We get the license for the gas from the fire department, so we're all set on this. Does anybody have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And that's all I have this evening, and I'd like to adjourn at 6:05.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Peter?
Thank you. Reporting for Public Safety Emergency Management, I have one motion to bring forward this evening, or I intend to bring forward. I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor regarding the FY19 Student Senior Awareness of Fire Education SAFE grants totaling $8,254, and requests this body approve expending of such funds in any future grant amendment by the Attleboro Fire Department. Got a second, Mr. Clerk?
Second.
This is something that we're very fortunate we get most every year in one fashion or another, a certain amount. And it helps both at the school level and over at the senior center to bring our seniors up to date on certain fire awareness and our children in our school system. Much appreciated. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you very much. That concludes Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee.
Sarah? Do you have anything?
I have.
You wanna-
No,
You can cancel?
I can cancel.
Adjourn.
City Property and Claims is canceled this evening, but I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Peter, could you adjourn your meeting, please?
Yes, I said it ended. I didn't say adjourned.
No, you
I used a
didn't.
different word.
Second.
Aye. Trying to shuffle papers and talk at the same time.
So Jay's running a little bit late this evening, so is Counselor Conti, zoning and land use?
Call the Zoning and Land Use Committee to order at 6:07. 2 items of business today. From the docket of October 16th, 2018, I entertain a motion to amend ordinance 17-2.1.3A as follows. Amend 17-2.1.3A, establishment of industrial zoning districts by inserting the following language at the end of the paragraph. And C, compatible non-residential enterprises engaged in marijuana business, including but not limited to research, testing, growing, cultivating, manufacturing, processing, packaging, distributing, in retail and wholesale sales of marijuana and marijuana-based products.
Second.
So this first one here is to change the zoning definition for industrial business. And we had the public hearing. This is basically some housekeeping to clean this up now that we allow this business in industrial zones. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Second item, I entertain, from the docket of October 16, 2018, I entertain a motion to amend ordinance 17-2.1.3B as follows. Amend section 17-2.1.3B, establishment of industrial zoning districts, by inserting the following language at the end of the paragraph. And F, compatible non-residential enterprises engaged in marijuana business, including but not limited to research, testing, growing, cultivating, manufacturing, processing, packaging, distributing, in retail and wholesale sales of marijuana and marijuana-based products.
Second.
So this one is the same as what was above, but it applies to industrial business parks. And that's it. All those, any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Concludes my business. Move to adjourn.
Second.
Zoning and land use is adjourned at 6:10. These new chairs, I can't see the clock anymore.
Sarah, could you cancel traffic and transportation for me, please?
Oh, yes, I will. The Traffic and Transportation Committee has no business this evening, and we will cancel it, and I'd like to call a committee meeting for Council Krieger at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Public Works Committee is canceled this evening.
If we wait 1 minute, Diana, you can go for your special committee. We are cranking through this tonight. Right? We just have to, the other two to.
No, I don't have one for you. Huh? I don't have one for
I think
you.
I did it twice. I did it twice for myself.
You're gonna scream on if you do that, so then I'm gonna
No,
start
don't do it. I
copying
know it. I'm sorry. I'm like, not with it.
I'd like to call special committee for tax abatement review to order. And I don't have any business this evening, but I will be having some new business introduced at the next full council meeting, and that's the only update I have for that. Any other comments or questions about that? So I didn't really call it open, but it's just an update. That's it.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay. Oh, thank you very much.
Who's going to do
All
Richard?
right.
I don't know.
So, again, we have
Should Laura do
Jay.
Richard?
Well, yeah, I suppose, who's Jay's second? Are you Jay's second? Do you
Yes.
want to do his, you want to,
Yeah,
if you're uncomfortable with that, we can wait.
I'm not prepared to.
Okay,
so
that's
if-
fine.
If you don't
We
mind.
have plenty of time, we just need to get that in because those two pieces of business have to be voted out.
Got it.
City, what's the other one?
Capital improvement?
Capital improvement. Do you want to do that, or?
I mean, I can, but I won't be here.
Okay,
If
that's
and
fine.
if
We
you give
can
me 5
honestly,
minutes, I'll be good enough.
we can press pause on this
If you wanna-
and come back to it at 6:30, as long as everything that gets done, before 7 o'clock is fine.
I know.
And if you have paperwork, you can get that signed in the middle of all of it while we're waiting.
Peter, real quick, what were those papers that you just asked me to sign?
We're on television, you know. You want me to answer that? No, I did not.
We do have an emergency measure this evening, which,
Huh?
that's a piece of cake.
Trying to catch me off guard already, hasn't even started.
It's still early.
Do you know about those kind of issues that are ready to ask about it?
Yeah, it's important with regards to the
Such a
Why, well,
Did you get a copy of the motions this evening?
oh, right, okay, I understand.
Did you?
Right. No, you're right, I did,
You want-
I
you
did
got
hear
one?
that,
He said that she would give me a copy.
during this.
Why did I have the same one?
Maybe I
I don't know, maybe you forgot to give it to me, but I was.
Okay, but you do work that, so
Yeah,
it's
I'll
just
take
like
it.
to call this committee meeting today, as long as it's after the meeting,
Okay.
a time it's posted for, we're This is fine. the only
Okay.
thing holding off on is there's some discrepancy about how the division could do it, manager, so. When are you? Yeah, new business and then right away. Okay. I'm on the phone with it, because I feel like I'm already kind of taking forever with it.
So just a,
Because
this update where if someone calls you, you have to clear it, like it keeps showing up on your screen.
I don't have that.
we don't list them, with sections. He was okay
Interesting.
with all of this. Yeah, we were okay, this is what the, gentleman guy said about it, which is.
The things that we had to
Yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah, they were comfortable with that.
And that we got the money.
No, this I'm worried about, because this is the freeze, which I don't even know if it's gonna go anywhere.
I saw that.
Something that everybody was worried about. Everybody knows, staying away, yeah, yeah. So, but that seems like it's a lot, like, it doesn't seem like it can happen right away, even though we've been in the paper kind of saying that you do this, it's not that freaking simple, it's really.
Yeah, but there's gonna, there's gonna be people in the
Pressure,
community
yeah.
pressuring
But there's
us
nothing, there's.
and keep rehashing it.
Now that they sold these percentages.
Extremely.
I would like to call Budget and Appropriations Order at 6:28. I have two motions to bring out this evening, both of which are pretty straightforward. I entertain a motion from the docket of February 19th, 2019. I entertain a motion or request to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $115,257.91 from account 1-000-359000, undesignated fund balance free cash general government, to account 1300100-551011, school appropriation, Medicaid, to fund the municipal sharing agreement.
Second.
Thank you, Council Cobus. This is straightforward, something we've been doing every year since 1999. The City of Attleboro and the Attleboro School Department, since March 31st of 1999, has a memorandum of understanding that we're going to be funding part of the municipal Medicare. So that amount for fiscal 18 is $115,257.91. I have the backup information. If anyone needs it, certainly let me know.
I have it here, let's go through it. No
Perfect.
questions for me.
All right, I appreciate that. Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes, thank you. Finally, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $4,250 from account 1124100-578300, citywide reserve fund, for transfer to account 1210100-524011, police maintenance of buildings, for funds to repair the women's bathrooms at the police department.
Second.
Thank you, Council Davis. This is pretty straightforward. I did speak with the chief, and this is really just to ensure that we're able to fix the first floor bathroom where the toilet is falling off the floor, as well as the second floor bathroom sink has become attached. I think this is indicative of what we see as we continue to have aging buildings. And that's really all the comments I have. I don't know if anyone has any. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That's all the business I have, and we'll look to adjourn at 6:30.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee to order. From the docket of February 19, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $24,760 from account 1-000-359000, undesignated fund balance free cash general government, to account 42220-70-584015, septic replacement, to replenish the cost of an emergency repair at the Hill Roberts Elementary School to the main and backup injector pumps.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Dolan. So, the injector pumps have been failing for quite some time. I've been hearing about this for at least 6 months, and there's two injector pumps because Hill Roberts is down in the valley and it has to push the sewer up to get it into the system. So there's two systems. It's a redundant system, so if one fails, the other one can work. Well, one failed, and the other one, the automatic limit switch failed. So a custodial, janitorial, maintenance, somebody had to go down there every 8 hours and throw a switch until the pump cleaned out the system and then shut it off. That's been going on for 6 months. So finally, they realized that the second pump is going to fail because they're both put in at the same time, and decided to get the appropriation before the second pump failed. Are there any questions?
No.
Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. From the docket of February 19, 2019, I move to request of the mayor to transfer $13,250 from account 1124100-578300, citywide reserve fund for transfer, to account 1135100-53015, audit services for a financial statement audit of the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority.
Second.
Councilor Dolan. So, this is something that I think should have been corrected a long time ago. The Attleboro Redevelopment Authority, as you know, is comprised of 100% volunteers. There's no paid director. And at one time, there was a paid director, and at one time, this audit was paid for by the city. But in a change of policy, the cost for the auditing got moved to the Attleboro redevelopment bottom line. Now, because we do not require any of our other departments to fund their own audits, the Parks and Recreation Department takes in a lot of money every year, and the auditor does all the books and requirements to settle their books. Other departments have income and expenses, and the auditor takes care of the whole budget. And when there's an audit done, Haig, Shahihi, and whoever comes in, and they cover the whole books. This is just gonna tuck ARA in under the umbrella with all the other departments, and I think it's a very good measure to have one audit firm do all the work instead of having two clients, the ARA and the city. It's the same firm that does both audits. So I highly recommend the passage. Are there any questions? Yes?
Yeah, so because I had talked to the ARA about this, just to get some detail. So they said, because it's required by the city,
It is required by the state.
the audit, that's why we're moving it. It's not just, we're just doing them a favor or anything.
Yes, the state requires the ARA to be audited just like it requires the city to be audited. And I see that as one, because I see the ARA as a city function. I don't see it as an independent organization. And I know not everybody sees it that way, but the way the law is written about the formation of the redevelopment authority, it says in the law that the city can support the organization. And I think for what the ARA does for the city, they deserve some support. So that's my comments. Councilor Parika.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. I'm having flashbacks to many, many moons ago when we would have conversations about the special circumstances by which we became part of the city. The other part of it, too, is I met with Deb Gould about a variety of topics. This one came up where we are submitting for bonding to finance the new high school and things like that. We did have the option to wait a year to have an audit of the ARA. However, it is more beneficial for us to pay for this particular audit, especially where we borrowing so much it can go with our bond rating. So it just kind of keeps everything nice and tight so that we get the best available cost for funding. So.
I remember attending several ARA meetings before Councilor Delisle was on the board in the library under the helm of Judy Robbins. And they were struggling at that time to get the 2015, 2016, 2017 audits up to date because they didn't have the money to do them in 15 and 16. They knew it was a state mandate, but they couldn't get them done because they didn't have any money to pay anybody. So while it's a state mandate, Counselor, you can get away without doing it for a little bit, but you can't get away with doing it without doing it for a lot of it. And as Councilor Parika says, tying all the finances together in one bundle makes a lot of sense. Councilor Delisle.
I'd add, if I may, thank you. I echo your sentiments and that Vice President Parika's. I also spoke with Deb Gould today, and I think that what's important is, one, this isn't the first time the ARA has gone through an audit, as you just said. Secondly, with all the moving pieces that they've had over the last 12 to 18 months, I think it's apropos to make sure that we're able to get this done now, as opposed to waiting another 12 to 18 months. So this is a measure that I'm in full support of.
I also think, if I can carry on right on your support, I think that the activity level of the ARA is going to diminish, and that it's not going to require so much auditing, so to speak, so that I don't know that this will be such an expense in future years, although this maybe a minimum expense. I'm not sure, yeah.
And the fact that the activity may be diminishing is actually a compliment to the work that they've done. Because, when you and I sat in those meetings, prior to my first coming on council and then as a member of the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority, I remember just looking at that agenda, and we had, and sometimes up to 9 agenda items. And most of those have now slowly but surely, through the hard work of that board, been checked off. So I agree. I think it makes more sense, get it all under the same umbrella. It's fiscally the responsible thing to do.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? No. Motion's in order. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the business that I have to bring before the committee tonight. I missed the last Municipal Building Commission meeting, and I apologize for that because I wanted to be there badly. But I had a family emergency. The Building Commission is continuing to work on the library question. So I think today you all received a memo from Deb Gould about how we might reshape some funds to redirect them in a new direction, and I am very much behind that. So you're going to hear a lot of support from me coming down the road on that measure to move those funds to achieve what we would like to accomplish that was generated by the Municipal Building Commission. So that's all I feel at liberty to say tonight, and there'll be further details coming up shortly. Yes, Councilor Delcio.
Thank you for that, because I'm very interested in the library and looking at all the options that may be in front of us and some that may not be. But moving forward, do you have an idea when the capital improvement book will be coming down?
March 1st.
It will be March 1st. And just a request to your committee, is it possible to get a report on all the vehicles from, I would say from fire, police, DPW, water, just kind of to get one document that has where they are? Because I think we're going to be seeing some of these aging vehicles start to have an impact.
If I could, Councilor, pass that request over to Councilor Reynolds, because as city property and claims, you have access to the insurance policy of all the vehicles in the city that are insured. So if you would please make a request from the administration for a list of the vehicles in the insurance policies and circulate to all councilors, and I think you'll see what we have.
I'm more or less concerned about mileage, which a lot of the information would be inside that capital improvements plan anyway. I can always reach out as well. I just didn't know if it was something that, if you were taking requests of things that would be interested in looking at, that's something that I'd be interested in taking a look at.
Let's start with the major list. While we're going through the capital improvements, we'll review that list with the heads.
Sure.
And what you're discussing is a vehicle resupply program,
Correct.
which I like the sound of.
Okay.
But with the clamoring of all the other capital improvement needs, I know what's going to happen to it.
Well, I just think that it's
I
something.
like the thinking, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
and I appreciate that. And you and I oftentimes are on the same page when it comes to these sort of things. So I'm just kind of curious, because I think any tool that we have that can help us kind of plan and take away some of the sticker shock when some of these come down, I think will certainly be helpful. Because I want to, because it's important to me in transparency that these departments, especially police, fire, DPW, they have the tools that they need. And a lot of times, I know the last 4 budget cycles, we've asked, the departments have been asked to level fund. And if we're going to do that again, which I don't know, I haven't had the conversations with Barry. We're hoping to sit down in the next week or two. But I'm just kind of curious, how do we plan for, because there's a lot of congruency, between your committee and mine. So I'm just trying to get out ahead of this as much as I can.
There is, and I agree with you. Last week, watching the news of the Mansfield fire engine catch, it stopped my heart.
Right.
If that happened in Attleboro, we don't have the resources around us that Mansfield does.
Correct.
And ouch.
Correct.
So, yeah.
And we saw the towing 2 weeks ago. We voted on towing for a fire engine that ended up breaking down. And, I believe we voted on one about 12 to 18 months ago, and they take a year,
Yep.
to get properly equipped. So just trying to use it a little more as a proactive planning tool.
Well, Council Reynolds will get us a list of all the vehicles. The capital improvement plan always has a vehicle section of what vehicles each department wants to
Correct.
replace. We'll marry the two together. We'll see if we can develop a vehicles resupply program to bolt on to the capital improvement plan. I think
Perfect.
it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to come before the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn at, I have no idea.
6:43.
Thank you, 6:43.
Very welcome.
Can't see the clock.
The new chairs. We're gonna have to raise it up.
Past me, or?
No, your chair's too high. See, if you didn't have a new chair, I'll tell you what.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, did you adjourn? Oh, did you already do that? All those in favor, aye. Rick?
This meeting of the Municipal Council will now come to order. If you all rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you. Mr. Withers, are we ready to, I make a motion to approve the records of January 8th, 2019.
Second.
Any comments? Motion is in order. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We don't need to suspend the rules. We don't have any joint public hearings. If you would, Mr. Withers, if you would read the notice for the first public hearing?
I will. It's a public hearing to address the adoption of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, as pertains to changing the Attleboro Disabilities Council to the Attleboro Disabilities Commission and all that that entails.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? If you would be so kind as to state your name and address for the record.
I am Angela Ferreira. I live at 94 Parsonage Way,
Thank you very much.
and I'm currently serving as the chairperson of the Council on Disabilities for the City of Attleboro. We have been meeting each month to make plans to fulfill our mission and our goals in supporting the city and residents who have disabilities. We've had meetings with the Massachusetts Office on Disabilities, which is why this motion has come before you today. In order for the council to function more appropriately for the city, we'd like to be adopting the legislation that allows us to become a commission. There's really not a huge difference between a council and a commission on disabilities. The major change would be the creation of a 22G account, where handicap parking fines would fund that account, and then those funds would be used to, we would have to propose any kind of support using those funds for the community, hopefully doing some things like accessible playground equipment or removing any kind of barriers for citizens in the community that have disabilities. Those motions would come through the mayor's office and then down to you. We would not be able to expend any funds without your approval.
Terrific. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Ferrer? Councilor Holmes?
I have a lot of comments. Well, thank you for doing this. And you have a pulse in the disability community, and this is what you're requesting, and I'm really appreciative of the work and effort you put into this. We've met a lot individually, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. We have a great group of volunteers. Many are here this evening who are helping our group in supporting the citizens in Attleboro. The other great thing that moving this forward does, it gives us preference when we apply for grants that will help the city comply with Title II and Title III, which is an important thing for the city to start focusing on, and we're working on addressing that as well. It can help us apply for significant grants that will help us in acquiring things that will improve the city, like audible crosswalks, which are very expensive. We can apply for a grant to help pay for those kinds of things. And having a commission rather than a council gives you preference.
Councilor Conti?
Ms. Pereira, how long have you been on the commission?
It was reestablished starting in May of last year.
So it did go defunct.
It had been defunct for a number of years, yes.
Yeah, that's a shame. I've known many of your predecessors who were expressing a frustration with the ability or inability of the group to get anything accomplished. And I didn't know that becoming a commission could assist you in doing that. Otherwise, I would have recommended it a long time ago. So kudos for taking charge of it and doing the research and figuring out how to get some punch into the group. I've support you 100%. And I won't belabor the issues that we've gone in the past because many of them have been resolved, thankfully. But I'm looking forward to an active commission, and I wish you well, and you have my full support. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. Councilor Waterman?
Yes, I also am delighted that you're here and that you're pushing forward. And I want to thank you for helping me once with an issue when I found a man whose wheelchair had fallen crossing the bridge at Holden Street, and you helped a great deal with that gentleman with the sidewalk. And I just wondered if you would like to share maybe one or two things that you're talking about now, right at this time.
What our council has been focusing on is bringing in people throughout the community to help us develop a list of goals, things that are important that need to get done, and then prioritize those. First on our list is trying to become a commission, so that is why we're here tonight. But also, we're passionate about bringing some accessible equipment to playgrounds in the city, making council meetings more accessible to people who may have disabilities, and also addressing the Title II and Title III requirements that municipalities are required to follow. It's been in place since 1992. We do not have a transition plan, which we're supposed to have. If the Department of Justice were to come to Attleboro to evaluate where we are, we would be forced to meet their timeline rather than setting our own timeline, understanding what our needs are, understanding what those costs are, and having a long-term plan to pay for that. And there have been some cities that have been spot checked by the DOJ and have had to come up with $10 million over a 3-year period, and we don't want that to happen in our city. So we're actively looking at all the things we need to do to be compliant with the law, and then to bring more barrier-free areas to all sorts of walks of life within the city.
Councilor Delissio.
Welcome, and thank you for doing this, and thank you for bringing this in front of us. I think it's a no-brainer from my vantage point. A couple questions I have. Actually, one, you talked about the 22G account. So can you talk a little bit more, and forgive my ignorance on this, is that something as soon as this takes place, the state establishes it? Is that something the municipality has to establish?
The municipality would have to establish
Okay.
it. The treasurer would set up this account. If they needed assistance, the Mass Office on Disabilities can walk them through it. It's pretty easy. And it just, funds the handicap accessible parking fines go straight to that account. And then if we were to expend funds from that account, then the treasurer would have to give us a report.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, because it seems like you have a really active committee, which ultimately, hopefully, will be a council. So just keep that going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak neither for nor against? Oh. Are you speaking neither for nor against? For it. Unfortunately, that time has passed. If you have written comments, you can submit those to our administrative assistant for that. My apologies. Are you speaking neither for nor against, sir?
I am speaking neither for or against.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Francis Balut, and I live at 120 Carrier Avenue in South Attleboro. And I just wanted to say, in reference to this Disabled Commission, that she is the first person, and the chairperson specifically, that had actually included the word forum in their agenda. And by using the word forum, that allowed me to speak and not just listen. Like most committees, a person can only just listen. So I thank her and the remainder of her administration for allowing that word forum. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak neither for nor against? Councilor Holmes, do you feel it necessary to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
We can close that public hearing. Mr. Withers, and if you'd like to go on to read the announcement for the second public hearing?
Yes, the next public hearing is relative to amending the revised ordinance of the City of Attleboro, Section 11-9, discharge of water, in order to clarify the language as it pertains to the discharging of water on city streets.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Good evening.
Yes, my name is Mike Tyler, 196 County Street, and I'm the Superintendent of Public Works.
Welcome.
Yes, I asked the mayor to bring this ordinance in front of you to have an additional language specifically dealing with the icing of water on the roadways. So the current language really doesn't really have any language specifically for icing. It just talks about discharging water onto a street or a public way or sidewalk. So far this year, we've had like 4 instances where I've had to call my guys back in to treat roads, and it was all because of water coming from sump pumps onto the street during freezing weather. So when that happened, I had got in touch with my assistant superintendent, who's been on Attleboro longer than I have, asked him, what the standard procedure was. He kind of showed me a letter that they used to send out, and it just talked about impure water onto the road. It didn't specifically get to the core of the problem, which is the icing. So that's why I brought this language in front of you. I did a online research of numerous municipalities to try to get in line with what they have. It was also put in front of the city solicitor, where she made a couple minor changes to keep it uniform. And I wish that it would be supported. It is a problem that we shouldn't have on our hands. It's not something that I want to actively police by any means, but there's been a couple instances where people have basically told me, it's not my problem anymore. It's not my cellar. It's in your street. I don't think that's the answer. We want to work with anybody to alleviate a problem, but we can't relieve ourselves of our problem while creating something for somebody else. It's a public safety issue.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Dolan, then Councilor Kubic.
Sure.
So, isn't it already against city ordinance to have any type of water coming from someone's home leading out to the street, whether it's their sump pump? Because I remember this from going on my tour of wastewater, saying you can't do that regardless of the weather. You can't do that any time of the year. Am I right in the way I read this when it says?
That's not the way I read the stormwater, and it's not the way I read the ordinance. When it says impure, impure means because now it's been through a mechanical system. So if it was just active stormwater running off your property, I don't think there's a heck of a lot you can do about that unless, which this ordinance also changes, that you can't change the contour of your property. In
Right.
other words,
I
cutting
saw
the
that.
swale to allow that to get off your property and onto the public property.
So I did read that part about adjusting their land so it runs off into the street. I did read that. I'm just wondering if, because when I did read this, I was curious about a couple things, and because I believe the ordinance, you can't do it regardless of the weather. But I didn't see any, it was under offenses, under the charter, but I didn't see any, like under the offenses of a dog or whatever, you get a fine for this the first time your dog gets loose, and then the second time your dog gets loose. But I didn't see any, what they established for any type of fines. So I'm wondering if maybe, and I agree with your wording, and I believe it should be enforced, because obviously we don't want you guys running out to, clean up somebody else's mess, and obviously the danger of the sidewalk being iced over. But I'm wondering if the whole ordinance needs to be tightened up a little bit, if I'm right, because I remember speaking to Tom Hayes and him saying that you just can't do that. You can't run your sump pump and put it out to the street, because that ends up costing the city more money.
It does, and especially Attleboro, you have the two different systems. You know, the wastewater system and the drainage system are two entirely different systems, and it's great that Attleboro has that, because communities that do not currently have that are gonna have to have it under the NIPD's, you know,
And I
stuff
agree with
coming
what
up,
you're
so.
saying, absolutely, and I don't think, but I'm wondering if maybe this whole ordinance maybe needs to be looked at and better worded throughout, if I'm right in what I'm saying. And again, I met with Tom, you know, it was like a year ago, but I believe that it seems like there's nothing in here that says any type of fines it's under offenses. And I believe that you can't run a sump pump or anything from your house to go out to the street.
That is correct, but that's usually handled by conservation under their stormwater rules. So I'm looking for something more of that specifically for the
Right.
streets. Another typical case of that we had this year is a gentleman told me, he said, no, it's not against the ordinance because I'm not putting it into city drainage. There's no catch basin down there. So they were just letting it run off the road and then naturally going off to the side of the
Right,
road.
I understand.
And that's the kind of loopholes that I was trying to close by invoking
I get
this
it, and that's exactly what I was looking for you to say. I was, wondering what the goal was, but that makes complete sense. If there is no basin there, then technically,
That's right, they're not putting it into city drainage.
but if you're discharging it on the city property, which is the sidewalks, you know what I mean?
That's right.
But yeah, that makes sense. I understand now. I just want a little
No,
clarification.
absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kobus?
First of all, I'd like to applaud you for introducing this and bringing it forward. I know on Hodges Street over by St. John's Elementary, there's been an issue over there this winter and concerns with the kids on the sidewalks and whatnot. So this is great, and if it does pass, I assume it will take a couple weeks to sort of get through everywhere. Can you explain to us what we should do in the meantime if there is an issue or we see something like that?
Well, we still want to go up and talk to anybody. Like I said,
course.
this is not something we want to actively police. It's just more of when we get a call from a resident or the police department informing us of an icing situation, and then when we go check it out, it's coming from a household delivery. So I don't think it's something that needs to be expedited, because we're still going to have that conversation. This kind of just gives me a little bit more clarity when I'm speaking with that homeowner, because they're looking for those little loopholes, and I know what it's supposed to say, we all know what it's supposed to mean, but when it's brought to you and it doesn't make complete sense, and then some people naturally want to pick it apart anyways, to serve their self-interest. So I don't think it's something that needs to be expedited. It's just something that I'm hoping that moving forward, we can have specific language to give to somebody and say, no, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, but between now and when this passes, if it passes, still just continue to call and?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Councilor Conti?
So no one's discussed exactly what I thought this was all about. This winter, we had a very unusual circumstance that we had a lot of rain and we had a lot of cold weather, and those sump pumps were flooding the streets with ice. And I've been in some streets where the ice covered the entire street from one curb to the other curb, all from one house pumping down the slope, the water would collect and freeze. And at that point, it becomes a public safety issue, because you're driving down a street of which there's no ice anywhere, and suddenly you hit an ice skating rink in the middle of the road. It's larger than just putting some sand on it to take care of it, because there's a lot of water there, and the ice is thick. So I think that I sympathize with the homeowners who have wet basements, because they have to put the water somewhere. But they can't, the whole point is you can't put it in the street where it's going to freeze and cause an accident. Because if it does cause an accident, there's going to be lawsuits and it's going to be a big mess. So when I read the new ordinance, I thought that's what it was all about because of the recent ice freezing. But apparently that's just another consequence on top of the issues that you're dealing with. Is that correct?
It does, but the primary language is for icing.
Okay.
Like I say, besides that, it's really a normal situation if it's not icing. If I have a resident call, we went through a very rainy fall, so a lot of people were pumping, and we get that. So unless I get a complaint from neighbors where there's massive flooding on the road and stuff like that, I'll hand that off to conservation, because then it's just a stormwater issue. It's not really a public safety issue to me at that point, not unless the water was very deep. So I pass it off to conservation and let them know. It only becomes, in my field, I would say, when that water freezes. And just like you alluded to, we go out and sand it. And then the water keeps coming down a little bit, the temperature drops even more, and it freezes again, and we go back out, so it's redundancy. We have 6 or 7 areas that we know where this is going to occur, and, we try to stay on top of that, but it's not the answer.
It should come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Delosio?
Thank you. Mike, thanks for coming down. It's always good to see you. So question, as it stands now, where does the liability lie? So,
I would say, well, that's odd, the liability, I would imagine, would be on the homeowner,
even the way the ordinance is written now?
Yeah, because the way I would read liability is who is doing it intentionally. So if the city's making an effort to, once we're notified of it, it's like a pothole, I would say. There's potholes all over the city that we don't know about, and we count on people reporting them to us on one, either social media or an email or something like that, and then the city has a reasonable time frame to respond to relieve us as a city of a liability. So I think, icing is the same type of deal. If there's an area, a specific area on the street because of pumping that ice is put there, and we respond in some way, I think we alleviate the city from being any liability, but it shouldn't take it away from a homeowner at all.
But this language would put more teeth into that.
Right, and this kind of puts the teeth into that. Now that
Correct.
we've given them the letter, we've kind of let them unnotice that. And I get it, we all want to do things with, we want to be hot for when we do things. We want to work with anybody to try to create a solution that works for everybody, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Well, you can't legislate common decency, but I think that what this does is it kind of helps to let people think a little bit about where they're putting that water. So I'm in favor of this. One thing I will be looking to move is for it to become immediate upon passage, so that if we have another march like we had last year, that we're able to see this enacted. So, thank you, Mike.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Mr. Tyler, for coming in tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? I know you rearranged your schedule to be here just for this, Mr. Balut, so you have your time.
My name is Francis Balut, and I live at
Why don't you
120
check, you're getting
Carrier
feedback.
Avenue in South Attleboro.
We're getting feedback from you squeezing the microphone, so just release. There we go. All right. We want to be able to hear what you have to say.
My name is Francis Balut, and I live at 120 Carrier Avenue in South Attleboro. In reference to this discharge of water, I'm specifically concerned about the area from the senior center down toward Christopher Heights and people that might be going on to the bus station or in reverse coming back toward the senior center. And what I've seen for the last 3 years, it's off and on, and I mention it to individual people, things don't really seem to happen, but there is water runoff that comes from the side of the building right next door to the senior center. And that pipe, and I have pictures to prove my honesty and with dates and all that stuff, but the pipe from the roof should be connected, like halfway down from the roof to the lower roof. And what has happened there is
Excuse me,
that joint
Francis.
gets...
Excuse me,
Councilor
Madam-
Jackson.
Thank you very much. It's a point of order. We're discussing pumps from people's basements who are pumping it into the water, not what Mr. Balut is discussing at this point.
Thank you, Councilor Jackson. I do agree with you. So there was a point of order. This particular ordinance change is specific to the discharge of water from, regarding sump pumps in people's basements. And what you're specifically referring to is, water runoff off the top of buildings where gutters aren't connected and things like that. I'm quite confident. If you could maybe bring it back to what we're talking about here, that would be great, Francis.
I hear you, and I do not know what all of the section 11-9 contains in there. And it may be very specific, but where I'm just reading the public hearing in reference to the revised ordinance. I was hoping where it said discharge of water, that this discharge of water takes place through nature. And it comes down basically from both the Sun Chronicle roof and this other roof across the street.
So
where
Francis,
people
if I
have
could
to
interrupt
walk
you.
in the street.
Mr. Balut, if I could interrupt you just for a moment. This is your third time in front of us discussing this particular matter. What's beneficial tonight is that the superintendent of DPW is here, and we, one of us, are more than happy to have a subsequent conversation with him, as well as with the building inspector. I believe that we discussed that as well, to address this particular problem. And I'm happy to follow back up with you next week with regards to that.
I thought that this here sort of was that particular article.
It is not, unfortunately. So I know, I'm sorry. I get a little heartbroken little face, but here we are. But your concerns have been registered with us, and we will absolutely, I will follow up with you next week, usually when I see you in the office, with regards to that, okay?
I would really appreciate that because I say when people need to walk in the street,
We understand.
it's a problem.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak neither for nor against? Councillor Holmes, do you see any need to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
Great. I declare this public hearing closed. Mr. Withers, if you would read the...
The next one?
Yes.
Sure. The next one is a continued public hearing relative to amending sections of Chapter 10 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, Chapter 10, motor vehicles and parking as it pertains to Beagle Club Road. And I will state that Mrs. Acting President Parikh and I met this afternoon, and that public hearing will be continued until March 5th.
Thank you very much. And the next?
So the next public hearing is continued also. It's relative to the application for a special permit pursuant to Section 17-10.15 marijuana business of the revised ordinances from the Leonard J. Irving, Inc., 81 West Street, Attleboro, Mass. To operate a medical marijuana treatment center at 70 Frank Mossberg Drive. Said premises being Assessors Plat number 147, lot number 5F, with an area of 1.1434 acres located in an industrial zoning district.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Good evening, Acting President, members of the council, and the clerk. Jack Jacoby, 144 Bank Street. I represent the applicant. I'm going to be very brief tonight. Gary Arasian gave you a 50-odd page report today. Gary always does an amazing job, and I compliment him again. And I have prepared a response to that, which goes through each of the points where he asked us to say something. There's very little actually of substance, so I want to very quickly just tell you a couple of things. First thing is that the Conservation Commission granted to us our stormwater permit a few weeks ago. Second thing is that the zoning board granted to us the earth removal permit and the loading zone permit and the variance that we needed because we're not 100 feet from the residential zone. We're only 55 feet from the residential zone, but there's a 75-foot Algonquin gas easement behind us, so that could never be built on. So they accepted my argument that we effectively have a 130-foot buffer to the residential zone. The only other thing I'll say is that Gary asked, and I think we detailed this in the previous public hearing, but I put it in writing. So he wanted to know how many employees there would be. So for the retail at 70 Frank Mossberg Drive, which is the retail for Ashley's, and for the Leonard J. Irving Center, we will have approximately 20 employees with no more than 12 at any one time, and that's for the combined operation. We'll distribute them between the two depending on what the demand is. He also wanted to know next door at 76, where we have the cultivation facility and the manufacturing facility, and we would have 40 employees when Phase 1 is built, which is the first half, the right half, and then when the left half of the building got built, we'd go up to 80. There would be no more than 50 at any particular time at peak, and 30 when only the first part is built. And I think the reason he was doing that was to make sure that our parking lot was big enough, and it is. What we intend to do is have all of the employees for both 70 and 76 park at 76, so that the spaces that are on 70 are for customers. Gary had noted that he had not heard from Tom Hayes. We confirmed with Tom today, and he gave us an email that he's satisfied with the sewer arrangements, because we're going to a closed loop system. Obviously, he'll want to see the particulars when the building is finally designed. Gary also mentioned that he had not had a lot of information from the health department, but my clients tell me that they have spoken with Mr. Perry, and he is satisfied with the way things are at this point, and obviously, again, reserves the right to look at the final building plans when that comes. So the only other thing is that, and in speaking with Gary this morning and in looking back at the application, he came to the conclusion that we were having medical marijuana sales at 76 as well as at 70. That is not the case. And so I've put that explicitly in the letter, and if the application was unclear, and upon further review, as they say in the NFL, you could read it that way. So we're being very clear that there is no sales at 76. 76 is only the cultivation and manufacturing. It's just that the Leonard J. Irving Center is required to be vertically integrated, so it has to have a space for manufacturing and for cultivation, which it'll co-locate with Ashley's Farm and Ashley's Extracts. So that is all that I have to say, unless you have any other questions, and when the other hearings get called, I will have nothing to say.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jacoby? Mr. Kobus?
I don't have any particular questions, more of a comment to say thank you for putting all this information in writing. It answered my questions. Any lingering questions regarding sort of the wastewater and whatnot, if needed, we can add a special condition to say that, pending review, will require further review before issuing a building permit, and we can put wording like that in there if there's anything else. But
Yes.
From my perspective, I think I don't see anything else that I have questions on.
Yeah, I would expect you to put a condition on the special permit that said that the final wastewater plans need to be reviewed and approved by the wastewater department, and the same thing with the health department. Because there's, going to be baking brownies and cookies and things, and so obviously we don't have detailed plans yet as to how that is. One other minor point, we made a slight change to the interior plan, and you'll see at the back end of this, there's 2 pages, one which circles where the change is, and the other which is a clean one. It's a very minor change in the growing rooms, that's all. Other than that, would hope that you'd be able to close these public hearings tonight.
Any other questions for Mr. Jacoby? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak neither for nor against?
Francis Balut from 120 Carrier Avenue, South Attleboro. The question that I have is with Mr. Jacoby asking for a final permit. Does that include the responsibility of having the testing and the labeling of marijuana included within that permit, or is that a separate issue?
Mr. Cobus, would you like to respond?
Sure, that's all part of the state regulations for medical and recreational marijuana.
So this final permit would include the requirement of having to test and label.
As it does for any of these establishments within the state.
Okay, and would you ask Acting Vice President Peter Blair if he agrees with that?
Just if I may, before we get a little off track here, a public hearing is your time to speak and advocate one way or another. It's up to the municipal council to ask those clarifying questions. So if you have questions, like usual at the end of the meeting, if you'd like to grab one of us and have a conversation, that would be the appropriate time to do that. We don't really there's no mechanism in a public hearing for us. Our job is to ask clarifying questions, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Francis. Where was I? Was I neither for nor against? Okay. Is there anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Mr. Cobus, would you like to close this public hearing?
Yes, please.
I declare this public hearing closed. Mr. Withers, if you would read the notice for the next.
Certainly. The next one is a continued public hearing relative to the application for a special permit pursuant to Section 17-10.15, marijuana business of the revised ordinances from the Ashley's Extract, Inc., 81 West Street, Attleboro, Mass., to operate a marijuana product manufacturer at 76 Frank Mossberg Drive, said premises being Assessor's Plat number 145, portion of lot number 1 with an area of 6.2842 acres located in an industrial zoning district.
Thank you. Is anyone here to speak in favor?
Jack Jacoby, 144 Bank Street. The only thing I guess I'll add is to say that the state requirements as to labeling and testing are requirements of now the Cannabis Control Commission, and your ordinance requires us, if you grant the permit, to comply with every regulation that the state has. And so I think that might be the short answer to the question that was asked.
Thank you, Mr. Jacoby.
And I have nothing further to say.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Councilor Cobus, would you like to close this public hearing?
Yes, please.
I declare this public hearing closed. If you would be so gracious.
Certainly. In the next public hearing is continued relative to the application for special permit pursuant to Section 17-10.15, marijuana business of the revised ordinances from the Ashley's, Inc., 81 West Street, Attleboro, Mass., to operate a marijuana retailer at 70 Frank Mossberg Drive, said premises being Assessor's Plat number 147, portion of lot number 5F with an area of 1.1434 acres located in an industrial zoning district.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Jack Jacoby, 144 Bank Street. I have nothing further to add. I do see a counselor looking intently at the plans. Did you have a question, counselor?
No.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Jacoby. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Councilor Cobus, would you like to declare this public hearing closed?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I declare this public hearing closed. Mr. Withers?
Okay, we have another one. A continued public hearing relative to the application for a special permit pursuant to Section 17-10.15, marijuana business of the revised zoning ordinances from the Ashley's Farm, Inc., 81 West Street, Attleboro, to operate a marijuana cultivator at 76 Frank Mossberg Drive, said premises being Assessor's Plat number 145, portion of lot number 1 with an area of 6.2842 acres located in an industrial zoning district.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Jack Jacoby, 144 Bank Street. Let me just add that, by the way, on Friday, we bought the property from Orion Realty.
Oh, terrific.
So the client's very pleased to now be the owner of both 70 and 76.
Terrific. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Jacoby?
Actually, I can.
Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. So I see that for the cultivation, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. is what you're requesting for that? Is that like typical, like, I know they have another farm, so is that just going to work better for the farming?
Yeah, they need to run 2 shifts. So let me just say that Gary, in his report, questioned because you have the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which, as I read the ordinance, only applies to sales, not to the growing or the manufacturing. So they need to have 2 shifts, basically, to keep the product growing and moving as quickly as they can.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Mr. Jacoby.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Mr. Kobus, would you like to close this public hearing?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing closed. Mr. Withers?
Yes, and we have another continued public hearing relative to the application for special permit pursuant to Section 17-10.15 marijuana business of the revised zoning ordinances from the Leonard J. Irving Center, Inc., 81 West Street, Attleboro, to operate a medical marijuana treatment center at 76 Frank Mossberg Drive, said premises being Assessors Plat number 145, portion of Lot number 1, with an area of 6.2842 acres located in an industrial zoning district.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Jack Jacoby, 144 Bank Street. Let me just again be clear that even though we have to call it a medical marijuana treatment center, no sales are proposed at 76, and if you wanted to craft a condition that no sales be allowed from 76, we certainly would understand that, and it's what we not only intend to do, but we did not apply to the CCC to sell from that site. So I think it's covered.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Jacoby? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Mr. Kobus, would you like to declare this public hearing closed?
Yes, please.
I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Jack.
Jack.
All right. Let me flip my little cheat sheet over. And so we'll move on to the mayor's communication.
I certainly will. It's very long, so bear with me, okay? February 19th, 2019. Dear municipal councilors, I respectfully submit for confirmation by your honorable body the following reappointments to positions and for terms indicated. Kathleen Park, Attleboro Housing Authority, 5 years, expires February 2024. Tony Viveris, Board of Park Commissioners, 5 years, expires February 2024. Terrence McCrossan, Constable, 1 year, February 2020. Tony Viveros, Constable, 1 year, February 2020. Cynthia Vanveris, Council on Disabilities, 3 years, February 2022. Rosa Lopes, Cultural Council, 3 years, February 2022. Darrell Velez, Cultural Council, 3 years, February 2022. And Tony Viveros, Licensing Board, 6 years, February 2025.
Personnel and Human Services, please.
For your information, Historical Commission member Brian Simmons has moved to an alternate member position. Term to expire February 2020. Council confirmation is not needed for this appointment.
Thank you.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need for funding to repair Ladder 1, which was involved in an accident on January 4th, 2019. As you know, prior to incurring an expense, funding is required. The first phase of repairs has been quoted at approximately $22,000, and a purchase order has been processed with internal transfers from the fire department's heat and electric accounts. The second phase of repairs is more complicated and requires fabrication for some compartments on the apparatus. A verbal estimate of approximately $50,000 has been received, although that could increase significantly if additional damage is identified once the repairs begin. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $60,000 from account undesignated fund balance, free cash, general government, to account fire insurance. This request includes a $10,000 contingency. It should be noted that the city anticipates insurance reimbursement for these expenses, at which time the Office of the City Auditor will complete the appropriate accounting entries related to these expenses. Copies in your packets. In accordance with Article 2, Section 2-9B of the City Charter of the City of Attleboro, I respectfully request your honorable body to consider this as an emergency measure.
Budget and appropriations, please.
As you may recall from my communication of January 15th, 2019, my administration is moving forward with a capital project to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant, which consists of repairing 3 critical operational components: the lime silo boot, 19 variable frequency drives, or VFDs, and 2 sludge gravity thickeners. These components are explained in greater detail in a memorandum from Superintendent of Wastewater Thomas Hayes. Copies in your packets. On February 5th, 2019, your honorable body took the first step towards funding this project by appropriating $486,854.30 to fund wastewater plant upgrade, which is Fund 3225. As I indicated in my communication, the balance of the funding for this project will be through a loan authorization. As shown below, a loan authorization of $1,500,000 is now needed for this project. And it consists of a lime silo boot replacement for construction, $35,000. A VFD replacements, construction, $737,000. Sludge gravity thickeners, construction, $407,000, for total construction of $1,179,000. Design, $85,100. Bidding, $23,500. Construction oversight, $178,000. Contingency, $521,254.30. Total project, $1,986,854.32, less the February 5th, 19 appropriation of $486,854.30, leaving a total loan authorization of $1,500,000. If, after all bids are received and verified, the loan amount is greater than the actual costs, then I will be requesting that the loan amount be reduced appropriately. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to approve the following loan order. Order that $1,500,000 is appropriated for the permitting, bidding, construction oversight, and construction costs associated with plant upgrades to the city's wastewater treatment facility located at 27 Pond Street, North Attleboro, Massachusetts, collectively the project, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $1,500,000 under Chapter 29C of the general laws and/or Section 7, subsection 1 of Chapter 44 of the general laws, or any other enabling authority, that the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out this project. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 7, subsection 1 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Capital improvements and city development, please.
As you may recall from my communication of January 15th, 2019, my administration is moving forward with a capital project to replace approximately 88 linear feet of water main on Reed Street between County Street and West Street. The project is currently in the Water Department's fiscal 2020 to 2024 capital improvement program, listed as part of the city's 3-cycle municipal water system plan annual distribution system rehabilitation program Part 3 upgrade. This project is explained in greater details in a memorandum from Superintendent of Water Courtney Winchell. Copies in your packets. On February 5th, 2019, your honorable body took the first step towards funding this project by appropriating $231,107.08 to fund 3332 Reed Street Water Main. As I indicated in my communication, the balance of the funding for this project will be through a loan authorization. As shown below, a loan authorization of $2,700,000 is now needed for this project, and it consists of 8,800 linear feet water main replacement construction, $2 million. Road restoration construction, $352,000. Total construction estimate, $2,352,000. Design and bidding assistance, $102,600. Advertising, $1,000. Construction oversight, $168,400. Contingency, $307,107.08 for a total project of $2,931,107.08. Less the February 5th, 19 appropriation of $231,107.08 leaves a total loan authorization of $2,700,000. If, after all bids are received and verified, the loan amount is greater than the actual cost, then I will be requesting that the loan amount be reduced appropriately. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to approve the following loan order. Ordered that $2,700,000 is appropriated for the permitting, bidding, construction, oversight, and construction costs associated with the replacement of approximately 8,800 linear feet of water mains, including the road restoration on Reed Street, Attleboro, Mass., collectively the project, including the payment of all costs related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $2,700,000 under Chapter 29C of the General Laws and/or Section 8, Subsection 5 of Chapter 44 of the General Laws, or any other enabling authority. That the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary or convenient to carry out this project. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premium applied to the payment of all costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this loan order in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 8, Subsection 5 of the General Laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount.
Capital improvements and city development, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need to provide funding to the fire department vehicle maintenance and major vehicle repair accounts to maintain the fire department apparatus for the rest of the year. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $10,000 to account fire vehicle maintenance and $10,000 to account fire major vehicle repairs from account undesignated fund balance, free cash general government. Copies in your packets.
Public safety and emergency management, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Superintendent of Park and Forestry, Derek Corsi, regarding the need for funds to replace the dump body on the Park and Forestry Department's 2003 Ford 450 dump truck. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $10,530 from account undesignated fund balance, free cash general government, to account Park and Forestry vehicle maintenance. Copies in your packets.
Public works, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Park and Forestry, Derek Corsi, regarding the need for funds to repair the roof on the secondary storage garage at Highland Country Club. In order to store equipment in a safe manner and preserve the integrity of the building, the roof needs to be replaced. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $13,500 from undesignated fund balance, free cash general government, to account citywide maintenance of buildings. Copies in your packets.
Public works, please.
For your information, Historical Commission alternate member Brian Ludwig has moved to a Historical Commission member position, term to expire February 2021. Council confirmation is not needed for this appointment. I respectfully submit a communication from the Legal Secretary, Allison Wood, regarding surplus items that the school department would like to declare surplus. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. One JVC CD player, condition is outdated. One JVC receiver, condition outdated. One JVC cassette deck, outdated. And one JVC turntable, outdated.
City property and claims, please.
For your information, this serves to inform your honorable body that the land formerly known as the Highland Country Club will be identified as Highland Park moving forward. The task force created for the HCC future use agreed on the name on February 7th, 2019.
If you could just pause for a moment, Mr. Withers. I would like to actually refer that back to the administration and make a formal request that we get an update from the Highland Country Club task force. When this kind of information comes down in a mayor's communication, we've asked repeatedly for that update. So here we go. That's your formal request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I respectfully submit for confirmation by your honorable body the appointment of Donald J. Smith, 724 Oak Hill Avenue, Attleboro, to fill a 3-year term on the Board of Assessors. Term to expire February 2022. Copies in your packets.
Personnel and Human Services, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Legal Secretary Allison Wood regarding surplus items that the police department would like to declare surplus. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition. Copies in your packets. And there are 8 Fujitsu stylus, all in poor condition. These tablets are no longer serviceable and must have their hard drives destroyed.
City property and claims, please.
And finally, as you are aware, on December 27, 2017, your honorable body voted to fund the $125,000 request for proposal for Phase 2 of the library project for the purpose of evaluating the building envelope and mechanical systems at the library. The first phase of the request for proposal has been completed, and the cost of the exterior repairs is substantially greater than originally estimated. This office would like to amend the current agreement with the respondent to the original request for proposal to undertake a space needs analysis of the existing library to determine if funding the cost of the exterior repairs is warranted given the state of the interior library conditions and layout. City Auditor Deborah Gould has confirmed with Deb Anderson at the Attorney General's office that this change in scope is allowable, and I have attached her memo. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body grant permission to expand the use of the funds in Fund 3546 Library Project to a space needs analysis. Copies in your packets.
Capital improvements and city development, please.
Sincerely, Paul Haru, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Withers, are there any other communications?
There is one other communication, and this was a communication dated February 15th, 2019, from Jeffrey Dugan. He is Assistant Director of Community Service for Massachusetts Office on Disability in support of the adoption of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, pertaining to commissions.
All of a sudden, it just,
Ordinance?
ordinances, please.
And that is all.
My apologies. Thank you very much. And now, I entertain a motion. Does anyone need a break? Keep going. Excellent. I entertain a motion to go into committee of the whole.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council on any matter of city business? Please come to the podium.
Good evening, councilors and Madam Acting President.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Sure.
Pass that around, I appreciate it. I have something I'd like to...
If I could interrupt you, if you could state your name and address for the...
name is Bill Bowles, 65 Norgate Road, Attleboro.
Thank you.
You have a matter that's before you to use the home rule charter approach to allow term limits for the office of mayor in the city charter, and I'm coming before you to speak to that. Before I get into the comments, when I served in this honorable body for 14 years, I did it for the same reason that I believe each and every one of you do it. And although some of you I tend to agree with more and some less, but I think that everybody in this chamber does it because they love Attleboro and because they want to make Attleboro a better place to live. And that's the reason why I'm coming before you this evening. And one of the things that I hold quite sacred in the city of Attleboro is the city charter. The city charter, as you know, is the city's constitution. It's not intended to be easy to change it. And it's very similar to the constitution of the state. You've got to go through a lot of hoops and a lot of hoops to change it, and then the federal constitution's the same thing. You need 3/4 of the states, as you know. So in the city charter, in order to change it, if you want to make a minor change, and you can see from this Chapter 43B that I have passed out, and when I'm talking about a minor change, I'm talking about something like if you wanted to, say, degenderize the language of the city charter. Or in my 14 years on the city council, we used this process once and only once. And that was when former Fire Chief Ron Churchill had reached his 65th birthday, and there's a mandatory retirement at age 65, and we used that same process that the mayor is trying to use for the term limits, the home rule charter, which requires 2/3 vote from the city council. So those are the kinds of things that that process was put in place by the state. If there's minor changes to the city charter. If there's anything more significant changes, there's a whole different process. And if you refer to the first paragraph of what I handed out, it says in that only a charter commission elected under the chapter may propose any change in a charter relating to in any way the composition, mode of election or appointment, or terms of office. And the one I'm focusing in on this evening is terms of office of the legislative body. My contention is if you're talking about term limits, you're talking about terms of office. This section of Mass General Law specifically says that if you're going to make a change to the charter involving terms of office, then the appropriate vehicle would be a charter commission. And a charter commission is obviously very different than this process. To form a charter commission, you have to go out and you have to collect the signatures of 15% of all registered voters. You have to then get those signatures certified. Once they're certified, then the city council would be obligated to put on the ballot the election of a charter commission, the election of a charter commission. So it's made difficult on purpose because it's the city charter. And I would contend that the item that's before you to use the home rule petition approach, which is only a vote of 2/3 of the city council, is the wrong approach to change the city council. Oftentimes, mayors will get opinions of the city solicitor that are favorable to what the mayor wants to do. I don't think there's very much gray area in here when it says terms of office. And I looked at the opinion that the council has on this matter, and if you read the opinion carefully, it refers you to this section of Mass General Law, but it doesn't go in and specifically say on the opinion whether they feel that the term limits applies to this or doesn't apply to this, although I do think the terms of office is pretty straightforward. But I would ask the council, when you're considering this, to think of a higher standard. Certainly, as you read this section of Mass General Law, it's clear that the intent of this is to make significant changes to the city charter more difficult and require the appointment of or the election, I should say, of a charter commission. So whether I would be up here arguing this exact same point, whether I was for the term limits or whether I was against the term limits. I think that this is an extremely important vote that the council will take, and I think that it's extremely important that this gets that the council looks at the intent of this when you're making your decision, because I don't think that we want to get into the habit of changing the city charter using the home rule petition for extremely significant things. I was talking to somebody and they said, well, why not just put it on the ballot? You can't, at least as I read this, you can't do this. It says that the election of a charter commission. It doesn't say, well, you could put this on the ballot for that matter. Even if you went and you put that on the ballot, shall we have term limits? And it was 90% of the citizens said yes. You still have to get around the fact that you have to have a charter commission to do this. And as you know, I'm sure you know, but the charter commission, because they're independently elected, it was specifically intended to use that process so that it would not be a committee that the mayor or the council appointed. It's really meant to be, people can run for charter commission as they did over in North Attleboro. And the elective body doesn't control who sits on the charter commission. So I would ask you to vote no on the request to change to institute term limits using this council process. And quite frankly, we're just heading into an election season. Everybody's going to be running around doing all kinds of things. So if somebody really wanted to do this, there's plenty of opportunity to go out and get the signatures and do it the way that the Mass General Law states that it should be done.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bowles? Councilor Conti?
So, Bill, you've been around longer than I. Do you recall a charter commission in recent history?
There was one several years ago that I believe John Davis was somehow involved in, but I don't recall ever seeing the election of a charter commission on the ballot anywhere. I know that there was one before my time that former Mayor Judy Robbins was elected to, and she was the chairman of that charter commission. And that's the charter commission that gave us the charter that we have today.
So I think I participated in that, but I thought that was a master plan. Did it actually come to a vote to the taxpayers? I don't think that ever came to a charter change. But that's
Well, the charter commission could have decided.
The answer to that.
Go ahead, please.
The charter commission, the last charter commission was, I think Judy might have sat on it. It was way back. Could have been the 70s. I'm not really sure the date of that, but people like Judy Robbins, Kay O'Brien, a lot of people that have since passed away, that was a full charter commission. And I believe what John Davis sat on was called a charter review commission, where they took the charter and they looked at it. And if you look at the charter, there might be some recommendations kind of like down there. I forget what we called it when we were looking at it. And I believe that they just looked at it and said, these are some possibilities that we might want. But there was never a full charter commission put together. And as Bill was saying, the way you do it is you have to go out and get your 15% of the voters and do that. So probably they didn't want to go through all that.
If I could just interrupt just for a moment, if you could just state your name and address.
Ellen Parker, 65 Norgate Road.
Thank you very much.
So, Bill, back to my original question of whether or not there was a charter in the past. In my experience sitting on the council, we've never had a home rule petition. Was there ever one while you were a councilor?
Yes, there was the home rule petition is the process that 2/3 of the city councils has to vote on. So when I was actually a state representative and also a city council at the same time, that was the case where the fire chief, Ron Churchill.
Right. So that was that one case.
So that was the one case. That's the only case that I'm aware of, although I believe there may have been some.
So the question I'm asking, you've made it clear that you think that by going the home rule route for this measure request by the mayor diminishes the impact of the charter, that the proper way to do it is through a charter review. But when it was done for Churchill, did you feel that same way?
When I said earlier that it's meant for minor aberrations, if you're extending, allowing somebody who's in good physical fitness to serve for 2 more years, that is very different. That's a minor change to the city charter. You're not changing a major tenet of the city that apply. That was to allow one person to serve for a couple more years.
Thank you for making that clear, because now I think I completely agree with you. And thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the speaker? Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
I have two other documents. I unfortunately didn't have 11 copies, so what I'll do with your permission is give them to the chair of the committee. I referenced chapter 43B, and what I gave you was section 10. These two documents, so section 3 and section 4, that goes into the process of how to initiate a charter commission, and I thought that would also be useful to the council.
So, Mr. Bowles, actually, if it would be all right, if you could give it to our administrative assistant so that she can make copies for the entire council, because at some point it'll come up for a discussion for all of us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for the committee of the whole? Anybody at all? Okay. I entertain a motion to arise from committee of the whole.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And we move on to, or is there anyone who needs to take a break? Keep on going. And we will start with our committee reports, and we shall start with Councilor Jackson.
I'm always thinking that Steve was, excuse me. Reporting for Public Works Committee, I have no business this evening, but would like to call for a committee meeting at the appropriate time next week.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Waterman?
Yes. Speaking for the Personnel and Human Services Committee, I have no business tonight, but we also would like to meet at the appropriate time next week.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Waterman. Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Acting President. Reporting for Capital Improvement and City Development Committee, I have two motions to bring before the council this evening. From the docket of February 19, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $24,060 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government to the septic replacement account to replenish the cost of an emergency repair at Hill Robbins Elementary School to the main and backup injector pumps.
Second.
The motion is in order. There was a small error when you read the number. It's $24,760.
$24,760.
Thank you. Any comments?
There is backup in the mayor's communications that is specific to the events that led up to this. It was an emergency repair. That's a redundant system, I explained earlier, and I urgently request my fellow councilors to approve the measure, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Any additional comments? Okay. This requires a roll call vote, and we start with Ms. Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Parika?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of February 19, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $13,250 from the citywide reserve fund for transfer account to the auditor audit services account for a financial statement audit of the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority.
Second.
Thank you. The motion is in order. Any comments?
I think I explained this clearly about a half an hour ago, and I have no further comments.
Thank you very much. Any other additional comments? Mr. Kobus?
Just one thing, and I think I heard you say it earlier, but by us doing this one time, we're not committing to paying for this audit each year or whatever the recurring time period is that this has to happen. Is that correct?
I don't think that is correct. I think that this brings the expense of the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority annual audit mandate into the auditor's department's responsibilities.
But what we're approving here is just for this one time. If they would like to do it again, they would have to come forward and ask for
I think, Council, if I may, I think the
Sorry.
reason why it's in front of us is because the auditor didn't budget for it this year. So the money needs to be transferred so that she can afford to pay for it. But I think in years coming forward, the auditor will be budgeting for the ARA to be included in her audit budget. Does that make it clear?
It does, but this is the first year that the city is paying for this, correct?
No, the city used to pay for this on a regular basis.
When the ARA was
Formed,
originally.
yes. And that continued for a long time until developments about 14 years ago.
Does that clarify your question, Mr. Coolis?
It does.
If I could
Mr. Delesio?
Thank you. If I could add further clarification, my understanding is the ARA used to pay for this out of their own coffers. Part of the issue now is it's not fiscally prudent for them to do it. I believe in, keep me honest, because I know we've sat through this, I think we've seen these audits go as high as $25,000 in years past. So what needs to happen is the city's going to take this one. I think what Council Conti was saying earlier makes an abundance of sense, is we need to look to bring all the audits under one umbrella. That's currently not the way it's situated right now. I don't know that from a fiscal standpoint, it would make sense to have the ARA pay for this when we're already having the audit team come in to audit other aspects of the government. So I think it just kind of streamlines it at this point, and it gives the ARA a little bit of much needed breathing room.
Okay. Counselor Dolan, and then Counselor Reynolds, and then Counselor Blair.
Well, I thought I was clear on this, and I saw Deb Gould today, and she's like, do you have any questions? I'm like, no, I'm good, because I thought I was clear. Apparently now I don't feel as clear as I did when I said, no, I don't have any questions. From my understanding, is that the ARA, the city, Deb Gould, the city of Attleboro, requires this audit.
State.
Well, excuse me, you're right. The state requires it from the city of Attleboro. And Deb needs this information from the audit to move forward with any city business and bond ratings and everything else that the city does. So my understanding is it really is our obligation. We're not doing the ARA, from my understanding, we're not doing the ARA a favor right now by being like, you know what, we'll take this one, we'll pick up the tab. From my understanding, that's not the case. We're picking up the tab because it's a requirement by the state that's requiring the city to audit the ARA. So that's my understanding, and hopefully I was right, because I could have asked Deb Gould anything when I was standing in her office, but I didn't, because I thought I was clear. But that was my understanding, that it's a requirement of the state, which is requiring the city to do it, and basically falls under the city's responsibility to take care of this audit. That's my understanding.
Ms. Reynolds?
So I have some concerns. I'm going to vote no. Basically because allegedly the ARA is a total separate entity from the city. We went through this during the lawsuits. We went through it when we tried to get them to do something for Finberg, and they turned it back over to us, and then we were told, no, you can't do that because we're two separate entities. And so maybe we are being requested by the state to have every department audited, but all of the other departments are definitely under our purview. They're within the city. The ARA is supposed to be funding itself. In fact, they were supposed to pay us money back, and we ended up making some kind of arrangement to give them that money back. So, no. We are being requested to audit. We are telling them, you need an audit, and they should be paying for their own audit. That's my own personal opinion. That's how I read it, and I will be voting no.
Councilor Blair?
I can see it on a one-time basis, and that's how I read it, so that we get in compliance. Not that I've spoken with Deb on it, but I don't think the way it's written, that it obligates us to continue paying it. Unless it's brought to us in a different manner.
Mr. Blair, would you take the chair?
Sure.
Thank you. We get to do all the fun things tonight. So just as I've spent quite a bit of time with Deb discussing this. The audit is optional. However, it is in the city's best interest to have this said audit this year, being that, as my earlier statements during committee, is where we are bonding to build the new high school, and we're borrowing, millions of dollars this year to make sure that the ARA is in compliance, and that at the state level, it helps with our bond rating. It helps us retain and maintain and acquire the best bang for our buck, if we will. It is not something that is reoccurring. However, with with Deb's eye on the prize and the borrowing that we have to do, this small amount of money, in comparison to all the rest of it, having this audit is extraordinarily beneficial as we move down the road. So that completes my comments. Thank you, Mr. Blair. Any additional comments? Mr. Kobus?
I agree with the statements. I understand where you're coming from, Sarah, in that I do think they should be independent bodies, but I do think this particular year, it's in the best interest of the city for all those reasons that you just said. So I'm supportive of it for this year. I would like to see there be some independence between the ARA and the city moving forward, though.
Mr. DeLucio, and then Ms. Holmes.
It's interesting. So just kind of backing up, it's not necessarily a favor to the ARA. This is something that to Acting President Parika's point, this is something that for what we have, the irons we have in the fire, we need to take care of. It's not the city auditing them. There is a third party. There is separation between the ARA and the city, and that's specific for lawsuits with the ARA, and it all comes down to the primary responsible party, which we've seen several different times. As far as Finberg, we were actually denied, not because they were separate, but because we were too close. So they weren't able to, the grant was denied because there wasn't enough separation. So it looked, according to what the grant said, is that the city was trying to use their own entity, which is the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority, which does fall under the purview of the city. Yes, they're their own independent board when it comes to getting grants and other monies that the city, given the nature of the specificity of it, may not be able to obtain on their own, which is why we have the Redevelopment Authority, which we've seen with several different projects. The Finberg thing was specific, saying that it looked almost like the city was trying to use the ARA to skirt under some regulations. So I think, to Councilor Kobus's point, I agree 100%. We need to do this for this year. I think we need to, and we do it for this year. It provides us opportunity to be able to scrutinize it a little more down the road. I do think it's a small price to pay when we have everything that we have going on at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLucio. Ms. Holmes.
Thank you. I'm reading this, that this is a one-time thing. This isn't a commitment to anything else. If there is a further commitment, or they want the process is changing altogether, I would expect it to look differently than this. So I'm agreeing, I'm going to support this, but I'm reading this as a one-time occurrence.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. First of all, well said, well said. I'm just going to make a suggestion through you to the chair. I just placed a call to Ms. Gould, left her a message to ask her to give us a call back. If we withdraw his second, if you want to just hold off and go on to everybody else's, if you don't want to, I don't know how comfortable you are.
I don't think that's necessary. I don't think.
Okay.
If I may, there is a time frame by which we need to pull the trigger on this audit.
No, I just meant by this evening, just if everybody else wanted to go and do their, if you wanted to wait for clarification for more
I'm going to call for a
homework.
vote.
Fine. Then the motion is in order. This requires a roll call vote, and we will start with Ms. Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delissio.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mr. Cobus.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Acting President Parika.
Yes.
9 yeas, 1 nay.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Acting President. That concludes the business at the Capital Improvements and City Development.
Aren't we supposed to vote, to call to vote? Aren't we supposed to vote to say
Ooh.
that he can?
Because he called for the vote. Do we have to vote?
If you formally move. to
Yeah, he didn't move the
Okay, I'm
question.
sorry.
He called for the vote.
Okay.
I called for the vote. So it wasn't a moving the question or anything like that. But thank you, though. Thank you.
So that does conclude the business that the Capital Improvement and City Development Committee has to bring before the council this evening, and we look forward to a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Would you like to address your special committee?
I would. The Special Committee for Council Rules of Procedure has two motions to bring before the council this evening. From the docket of February 5th, 2018, I move to strike the following item from the docket to revise the Attleboro Municipal Council Rules of Procedures as follows. Article 3, Section 1, regular meetings, 3-1.1, striking the measure following regular meetings of the municipal council shall be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. Said revisions to take effect January 1st, 2019.
Second.
The motion is in order. Any comments?
Yes, to do this would require a charter change. That concludes my comments.
Any additional comments for this evening? All right, this voice vote is required. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
From the docket of February 5th, 2018, I move to strike the following item from the docket to revise the Attleboro Municipal Council Rules and Procedures as follows. Article 4, Section 3, duties of the official council officers, adding to item H, set and prepare council meeting dockets. The additional measure to read, including any legal deadlines for committee, as it directly relates to also amend Article 3, order of business, and docket Section 2, dockets, Section 5-2.1, regular meeting dockets, item 2A, to insert including any legal deadlines for a committee after the president shall be responsible for the preparation of a docket. Said revisions to take effect January 1st, 2019.
Second.
The motion is in order. Any comments?
Yes, this was a new business I introduced that I have deemed is no longer necessary, and that concludes my comments.
Any additional comments or questions? This requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
So that concludes the business. The Special Committee on the Council Rules and Procedures has to bring before the council this evening. We look forward to a very big meeting coming up in the month of March.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Mr. Kobus.
Reporting for the Zoning and Land Use Committee, from the docket of October 16th, 2018, I entertain a motion to amend Ordinance 17-2.1.3A as follows. Amend 17-2.1.3A, establishment of industrial zoning districts by inserting the following language at the end of the paragraph. And C, compatible non-residential enterprises engaged in marijuana business, including but not limited to research, testing, growing, cultivating, manufacturing, processing, packaging, distributing, and retail and wholesale sales of marijuana and marijuana-based related products.
Second.
Thank you very much. The motion is in order. Any comments?
So we just discussed this in the committee. Like I said earlier, this first one is related to the industrial zoning district. The second one will relate to industrial business parks. And this is just some cleanup to add the definition, the marijuana business to the definition of the industrial zoning district.
Thank you. Any additional questions? A roll call vote is required, and we will start with Councilor Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Delissio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
No. Oh, yes, sorry.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Parika.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
From the docket of October 16th, 2018, I entertain a motion to amend ordinance section 17-2.1.3B as follows. Amend section 17-2.1.3B, establishment of industrial zoning districts, by inserting the following language at the end of the paragraph. And F, compatible non-residential enterprises engaged in marijuana business, including but not limited to research, testing, growing, cultivating, manufacturing, processing, packaging, distributing, and retail and wholesale sales of marijuana and marijuana-based related products.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. The motion is in order. Any comments?
This is the same as the previous one, but it applies to the industrial business park zoning district.
Terrific. Any other questions or concerns? This matter requires a roll call vote, and we will start with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Acting President Parika?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
That concludes my business for the zoning and land use committee, and I'll call for committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Councilor Conti, could you call for a committee meeting for traffic and transportation for me?
Yes, Acting Madam President. Reporting for Transportation and Traffic Committee, we request a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blair?
Reporting for Public Safety Emergency Management, I have one motion this evening. On the docket of February 5th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor regarding the FY19 Student Senior Awareness of Fire Education SAFE grants totaling $8,254 and requests his body approve expending of such funds and any future grant amendments by the Attleboro Fire Department.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Delicio. Motion is in order. Any comments?
We discussed it a little while ago. I tried to explain it. This is something we get every year, and it helps to educate our senior citizens as well as our students in our school system about fire safety.
Terrific. Any questions? This matter requires a roll call vote, and we will start with Councilor Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Parika?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. I have no other business this evening, so we request a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Mr. Delicio?
Thank you. Reporting for budget and appropriations. I have 4 motions tonight. Emergency preamble and motion from the docket of March 4th, 2019. I move to adopt the following emergency preamble, that the Attleboro Municipal Council vote to take action as provided in the city charter, section 2-9, subsection B, regarding the emergency which presently exists relative to additional repairs needed for the ladder 1, and approve the request to appropriate $60,000 into the fire insurance account 122010000-574010.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. The motion is in order.
This is just to adopt the emergency preamble, which came down tonight. Long and short of it is ladder 1 needs some emergency repairs due to an accident, and the city's insurance carrier is unable and unwilling to accept direct payment or authorize direct payment. So essentially, we're going to pay for it up front because they need a purchase order and a work order in order to be able to complete the work. Once that's done and they have everything, we will then get reimbursed for the $60,000. The $60,000 also includes a $10,000 contingency just in case the price starts to go up.
Any questions?
Or potentially.
Thank you, Mr. Delicio. Any questions? So our first vote, again, is just to declare this, to approve the emergency preamble. A roll call vote is required for that, and we will start with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Acting President Parika?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of March 4th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor as an emergency measure to appropriate $60,000 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account fire department insurance for additional ladder 1 repairs.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No comments.
Any additional comments?
Seven.
Councilor Jackson?
Thank you very much. Jay, do they, where this was, ladder 1 ran a red light. So do we know for sure we're gonna get money back from the insurance company?
That I don't know. I can certainly look.
Just curious.
Yeah. I didn't have the details of that situation.
Excuse me.
Mr. Blair?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That would be typical of your collision paying, whether you're at fault or not. I'm sure it might affect our rates next year, but they're gonna pay collision minus, we must have a deductible like you have a deductible, so.
Okay.
I think the reason, or I'm of the opinion, the reason the insurance company won't pay direct, first, they frown on that with the municipality. Second of all, this is an iffy estimate, so I think they're waiting for the actual repair costs to come in, to come up with a settlement.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Mr. Kobus?
Just a point of procedure.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's two motions here. The first one was to spend money out of the insurance account, and the second one was to move money from the undesignated fund balance into the insurance account. So I very much could be mistaken, but don't we need to vote on each one independently?
I don't believe that's the case. I actually...
I could be very mistaken.
I don't believe that that's the case. That's a typical move that in one motion, it goes from one into the other. We've seen that repeatedly. But I'm happy to take a recess and consult with our administrative assistant. I don't think... Would you like me to do that? I can do that. I'll call... I make a motion for a recess, 5-minute recess.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll be right back.
Sorry.
I think it's that way because...
What do I have to say?
I am back.
We're back. Yay. Heaven's sakes. Municipal Council meeting back to order at 8:38. I'll call Mr. Kobus. So you satisfied with the answers that we found?
Very much so, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or concerns? Terrific. The motion is in order. A roll call vote is required. 2/3 is required. And we will start with Councilor Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Copus?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Perica?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of February 19th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $115,257.91 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account school appropriation Medicaid to fund the municipal sharing agreement.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. The motion is in order. Any comments?
No, we discussed this just about an hour ago.
Very much.
Well, a
Any
little more.
other questions or comments? Okay, this requires a roll call vote, and we will start with Counselor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Acting President Parika?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And finally, from the docket of February 19th, 2019, I move to approve the request of the mayor to transfer $4,250 from citywide reserve fund for transfer to account police maintenance of buildings for funds to repair the women's bathrooms at the police department.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Blair. The motion is in order. Any comments?
No, we went over this at committee earlier this evening.
Terrific. Any other questions or comments? This requires a roll call vote, and we will start with Counselor Jackson.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Parika?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes.
Thank you, and that is all the business in front of budget and appropriations. I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Delicio. Ms. Dolan.
Reporting for License Committee, I have 2 items this evening from the docket of February 5th, 2019. I entertain a motion to approve the application to amend a Class 2 license dated January 9th, 2019, from Stephanie Cushan of Best Buy Automotive and Tire, Inc. at 925 and 931 Washington Street, Attleboro, for 40 display spaces and 8 customer spaces.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Jackson. Any comments?
No comments. We just spoke about this a little while ago.
Any additional comments? This requires a voice vote. Let me try that again. This requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
From the docket of January 8th, 2019, I entertain a motion to approve the application dated December 13th, 2018, from attorney Thomas Reedy on behalf of Cumberland Farms, Inc., for a new license to store flammables and combustibles at 633 Washington Street, Attleboro.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Delicio. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No comments. We spoke about this in committee a little while ago.
Any additional questions or concerns? This also requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
That's all the business I have this evening for License Committee. I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Counselor Dolan. Counselor Reynolds.
City Property and Claims Committee has no business tonight, but I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. Counselor Holmes.
Thank you. Ordinance, election, and legislative matters has no business this evening, and we'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time. And special committee for tax abatement review has no business this evening, but we'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. We have no old business. We have one piece of new business. I'll recognize Counselor Dolan.
Thank you. I move to refer the following matter to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation. Special legislation language to amend the charter. Motion to petition the general court to enact the following legislation to amend the Attleboro City Charter by replacing any gender-specific wording with gender-neutral wording, specifically deleting the word councilman and inserting in its place the word counselor, deleting the word committee man and inserting in its place committee member, replacing the word him with the words him/her, or the word his with the words his/hers, wherever they appear, provided that the legislature may reasonably vary the form and substance of the requested legislation within the scope of the general public objections of the petition.
I'm sorry.
Just get a little bit more.
An act to amend the Attleboro City Charter by making all gender references therein gender neutral, and this would be the state section, be it enacted by the state and the House of Representatives in a general court assembled by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1. The Attleboro City Charter is hereby amended by replacing any gender-specific wording with gender-neutral wording, specifically deleting the word councilman and inserting in its place counselor, deleting the word committee man and inserting in its place the words committee member, replacing word him with the words him/her, and the word his with the words his/hers wherever they appear. Section 2, this act shall take effect upon the passage by the legislature.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion is in order. Any comments?
So just, I know it's going to go to the proper committee, but just, I know what we just heard from Mr. Bowles, and I just hope that everybody supports this, because this is something that is minor in the sense of we're not changing the way we do business, we're not changing the way people are elected, we're not changing the way anything else transpires, except giving the same dignity to women as the men receive, and vice versa. So that's really all I have to say for now.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other? Councilor Conti.
Yes, Council, I'd like to thank Councilor Dolan for putting the new business together. I sit on a council that's predominantly women. To have a charter that is in a masculine voice is ridiculous. So I think that the measure should have come from a woman. I'm glad you put it together and brought it forward. Thank you very much. And that concludes my comments.
Terrific. Mr. Delizio.
To go off of what Council Conti was saying, I think this makes sense, Laura. I think when we look at this term, when we were all elected to this term, it was 6 women. I think this is the type of thing that we should be using. This is the appropriate avenue for this sort of change to the charter, not what was talked about earlier. And I do agree with Mr. Bull's sentiments earlier, so I will be supporting this wholeheartedly.
Any other questions or concerns? This requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and I will refer that to the ordinance committee. Thank you. All right, so that concludes the business for this evening. I thank you all for, hold on 1 second. No. Let the girl have her moment in the sun, for heaven's sake. So I thank you everyone for coming in earlier tonight and getting all the business from last week done. We have regular committee next week, and I call for an adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.